almost immediately, after people started returning to the city, the administration of the government, which moved from Lublin to Warsaw at that time, started discussing how the city could return to life. And one of the main issues, main challenges became rubble. The 22 million cubic meters of matter plus 4.5 in ruins which needed to be demolished presented an unprecedented challenge to the government, to the construction workers, to the institutions at that time. And this mass is shown on the work by Tymek Borowski, Rubble above Warsaw, which shows this mass levitating over the city skyline, and we can see how enormous this challenge was. And soon the state administration ceded the resolution of that challenge on Warsaw Reconstruction Office and the architects employed there. Among them, Maciej Nowicki, an architect who returned to Warsaw in 1945, establishing a small bureau of architectural debate within the office. And in that bureau, he and his colleagues worked on the plans for the reconstruction of the whole city. Among those plans was a plan for Warsaw City, so the central part, the commercial and office part of the future Warsaw. And this central part was to be built according to the unique plan, a plan which assumed that the rubble should be left in place and actually elevate the future central Warsaw 6 meters over ground. The new buildings were to be built on the elevated floor, while the old streets transformed into pedestrian throughways. The cars were to be set in motion on the elevated grounds above the pedestrian walks. The plan was never realized, although it found a huge support among the architects in Boz. It was not realized because it became apparent that the underground infrastructure of the city was not destroyed during the war, and therefore it was necessary to connect the reconstructed buildings to that infrastructure instead of building a new infrastructure. However, this also shows us the first large and long trajectory of history of transformation of rubble in the post-war Warsaw, the trajectory of clearing the rubble and removing it from the streets and depositing it in specific places in the city's landscape. On the clothed wall in the center of the room, you can see maps which show how the rubble usually was removed from certain places in the city center and deposited in the specific places across the city. This process lasted up until 1955, when the huge mass of rubble was moved to build what is now a national stadium. And the process became a crucial part of the post-war economy of the city. The horse carriages came every day from the suburbs of the city, from the countryside, to work in the removal of rubble. At the same time, the process engaged broader and broader masses of inhabitants, of people working in the city. And actually, quite soon, it became apparent to the administration of reconstruction that rubble clearance can be done on the voluntary basis. So instead of paying the workers, the voluntary actions of rubble clearance were organized. And from 1946, we see rubble clearance during Sunday voluntary works. From 1947, the whole month of September is devoted to voluntary work for the reconstruction of Warsaw. And on the one hand, of course, it was a process organized by the reconstruction administration, but on the other, it was based on a sincere enthusiasm of city inhabitants, volunteers coming from abroad to participate in the process of Warsaw reconstruction. And on the slideshow, which you can see on the other side of the wall, those groups are depicted on photos and film chronicles from the era. Among those groups were, as I said, are volunteers from Sweden, from Yugoslavia, students or guilds of photographers or confectioners. All of them participated in the rubble clearance in Warsaw of the 1940s. On the right side, on the wall, you can see a photo reportage made by Alfred Funkiewicz, a photographer working for the Warsaw Reconstruction Office. This reportage is a quite unique document showing a Jewish organization, a man from a Jewish organization, clearing rubble around the first and second monuments for heroes of the ghetto uprising. The monuments which today stand opposite to the Polin Museum, which stands on the site of artillery barracks, which ruins were demolished after the war. And you can see on those photos that the area of Warsaw Ghetto was leveled almost to the ground, and nothing except few ruins and mounds of rubble was left around this area in the city.